start since it's already 6:34. Is that Bob?
Why don't we go ahead and start?
Oh, okay. Okay, here's Bob. Okay, and here's Serge. Hi, Serge.
I apologize for being late. Thank you for waiting.
No problem. Okay, so this is our December Public Health and Safety meeting. Welcome, everybody. We're going to work through our agenda in the order we have. We have it laid out. So we'll just start off with some updates. We have an update on EV charging, streetlights, and power switch.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Matt?
I guess I'll take all three at the same time. We have the EV charging stations. We have them in the Public Works garage. We're still awaiting to get on the electrician's schedule. I don't know if anyone has been trying to get any work done at your house at all recently, but all of the trades are really backed up. So keep calling them once a week. Hopefully get on the schedule sooner rather than later. I'm hoping, late winter. I don't think it's going to be by the end of the year since we're already in December. But once we get on the electrician's schedule, it should go pretty quickly. Streetlights, we have submitted the updated repurchasing agreement to PECO. Instead of paying the $6,000 and some charge to purchase all of our streetlights, we now got them for a discounted rate of about $400. So yeah, $400. We could have all, passed a hat and actually, contributed and all bought them by ourselves. It's kind of ridiculous how much they went down in price. So once that agreement is received by PECO, it then goes to the PUC, Public Utilities Commission. Public Utilities Commission then has to sign off on the sale. Then it goes back to PECO, and then PECO then washes their hands from the streetlights. Once that happens, we can then go forward with the installation of the LED streetlights. Our consultant, Keystone Lighting Solutions, are waiting for all of the paperwork to go through. We're probably looking at late winter, early spring at this point, just with construction schedules, holidays, those sorts of things. So we already have all the financing in place. It's then just going to be ordering the materials and getting on the schedule once again. Last thing, power switch. I'm pleased to announce that as of November 1st, Narberth Borough Utilities that the borough uses for its own electrical usage is 100% renewable energy. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Matt.
Matt, I'm sorry I missed that last part. May I ask, did you say for electric or gas or both?
As of right now, it's just electric.
Okay, thank you.
But as we've discussed, there is the option down the line that we could convert our gas to, I guess, renewable methane, or there are options there. But I really am grateful for what you've done, and these are substantial carbon reductions already that we can then measure. Especially once the streetlights go in, that we'll be able to measure with the ClearPath software through ICLEI. So thank you very much for that work. And I'm also hopeful that, as a committee, we might be able to get out some sort of press release that could make this work more widely known to our residents, our neighbors, and inspire folks to make the power switch within their own residence. Okay. All right, so the next item we have is the Climate Action Plan implementation. And I spoke with the EAC at their last meeting. Jesse was not able to join us tonight, but I just wanted to review with the committee and see if there are any questions at this point, because we do have a $10,000 line item that we budgeted for 2021 for CAP implementation. And I discussed with Jesse Lytle, the EAC chair, different ways that that money could be spent. And I wanted to just give you his list so that we can be aware of it as a committee and see if you have any questions. Of course, we don't have to decide now, but we do have to be comfortable with that budget line, you know. So just to give you Jesse's list, he would like to use $500 to rejoin ICLEI, which is the organization, the nonprofit that we've worked with before, and that gives us access to their consulting and their ClearPath software. That's a way for us to continue measuring our carbon reduction, and we can use their forecasting tools to set targets.
Oh, thank you.
We can also possibly use some of the money if there are any kind of service fees that we incur as part of the EV charging stations. You know, I don't know if, like on the software side, maybe it's not a capital cost, but it might be an operating cost. The EAC is recommending an energy audit for the borough buildings. That's something that we can discuss. Again, we don't have to decide, but that's another way that they could imagine spending some of that money to get a sense of, you know, should we replace the windows in the borough building, or should we, what would be the highest impact renovation down the line in terms of energy savings? And then the last item that they're recommending for next year's implementation would be a public funding, some sort of public campaign to educate and inspire Narberth's residents to make the power switch, you know, to renewables, much like the borough is doing within its own operations. And that could include a mailer, you know, the cost of a mailer to residents. It could include possibly some sort of sign downtown that could measure our progress in carbon reduction and inspire people to take action in their private residence. So those were some of the ideas that came to me from the EAC. I just wanted to share those with you and see if you have any questions, and make sure that as a committee we're comfortable with that $10,000 allocation. If there's anything that's unspent, of course, that could be moved back to reserves.
Rob, I missed something. You said the $500, they're requesting $500 for ICLEI, and then you said an energy audit and the public campaign, like information campaign, but you didn't give a dollar value to the energy audit request or the other, unless I just missed it.
Yeah, no, I don't have exact numbers, but yeah.
So there's a huge gap between $500 and $10,000 that I'm just kind of wondering.
Yeah,
What
no,
are we
the energy audit,
yeah.
yeah, no, it's true. We don't have exact numbers, but this is a kind of placeholder. And if we don't spend the full 10,000, it would go to the reserves. Jesse told me that you kind of get what you pay for with an energy audit. So it could be, you know, that would be something to decide if we want to spend more on that or not. Can we talk about the energy audit for a minute? I recollect, I don't have an opinion about this. I just have some observations. I recollect that an energy audit was done on the Sabine Avenue property back in 2000, maybe 11 or 12. And I think we have a copy of that somewhere. And I also remember from conversations while being on property committee years ago with, and being a party to conversations that the borough was having with engineers. And there sort of being a sense or a consensus that basically, like, the things we're going to do anyway are going to end up saving a lot of energy in the out years. Like say if we're replacing windows and doors with improved windows and doors, that's inevitably going to save a lot of energy. So, that sometimes an energy audit, well, it's a good way of helping you track, say,
improve, track the extent to which you've maybe been able to save energy after you've made those changes, but that ultimately just by maintaining our buildings and caring for them well, we're going to do, we're going to make the most energy efficient investments anyway. So, and I've also, that's confirmed by my own experience with in looking at how to make my own home, which is sort of a small building, energy efficient as well, is that it's really hard to actually study, let's say, for example, the way you lose air, the way you lose heat in the winter and cool in the winter on a building that has many, many windows and different kinds of doors and openings. And while you could do a blower door test and measure it, how you improve that situation once you find out how much energy you're losing is really just to address like leaks in windows and doors, or the energy efficiency of, say, heating and cooling equipment. And that seems to me that we're already planning to do those things. Like those things are already allocated for as capital improvements. So I'm not sure. I guess I'm just wondering. I want to know more about what the energy audit would tell us before we would, decide to spend money on that. So I'd want to hear from more professionals. And I see Mona laughing, so
No,
I don't know what's so funny.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm getting very distracted by the background noise. And I'm wondering, can we mute and start again? I don't know if I hear like a lot of clanking and dishes in the background and I'm getting really distracted by
It's
it.
probably at my house. There's a dog walking around and there's a family eating dinner and I'm talking, so.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's there you go. That's the nature of working on Zoom. But I know I appreciate your comments. I was just smiling because I was getting distracted by background noise.
Yeah. Bob, yeah, I think it's a fair point and we'll return to it. I think the EAC is comprised of, I think, 3 academics at the moment, who will have more time in December than they've had.
Okay. And maybe like we talk with, like have conversations with borough engineers about it, because they may say, hey, this would be a good use of money. Or maybe they'd say, you know what, it's maybe save your money for building maintenance and improvement. So I'd want to hear from you. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And, just as I've learned with the budgeting process, Sean, that you and Matt have set up, it is also possible at some point to amend the capital plan. I mean, if we decide, say we decide that we don't have $10,000 of expenses next year to implement the cap on the operating side, but we do have a project that we agree on the capital side. It's possible to make that shift?
Yeah,
Sean, I guess that's
either the capital or operating budgets are always open to it. Well, actually, no, the operating budget can only be opened reopened in January and repassed. But yeah, the capital plan and budget can be amended. Keep in mind, though, that those are, you're talking about 2 different pots of origins or pots of money, so to speak. We can still do it, but you'd be transferring dollars from one fund to another as part of the transaction.
Okay, that's helpful. So, okay, yeah. So, I mean, as our baseline, we would have additional conversations so that we're comfortable as a committee before we make any recommendation on how to spend the dollars. But given our budget timeline, I wanted to have the money in there in case we can just come to some decision.
I would add one more comment while we're still on this topic, is that I do favor providing the EAC with some money to do a public information campaign, because I think it's important to educate. I think we're going to get the most benefit from say the voluntary compliance of our neighbors and residents in energy efficiencies and savings. And so I think we should put our money where our aspirations were when we voted for the Ready for 100 declaration. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, good.
I like the idea of keeping the 10,000 in the budget. I like Bob's ideas of thinking carefully about what we spend it on and how. I think we should be really judicious in that spending and see where our budget is lying, a few months from now. But I do agree that one great way to spend it might be some type of public education campaign, even if it's just a mailing, like one mailing to the borough. I think the Climate Action NARBs and NEARBs have done a lot of great research on how private residents can get involved and contribute to this. And I'm certain that probably a lot of people in Narberth are not aware that we have joined the Ready for 100 mandate to move to 100% renewable energy in the next couple of decades. And I think that's a really important goal. And I think it's important for people in Narberth to know that we're doing that, and also to know that they are part of that. So, but I like the idea of keeping it in the budget.
Okay, thank you, Mona. The next item, budget related, is the Narberth ambulance allocation. We remember we had a visit with the Narberth ambulance folks, and I think we recommended 5,000, and that number is in the budget. Then we discussed maybe at the last council meeting bringing it down slightly to 4,000. If we could start to rebuild, use that 1,000 to build some reserve. So I don't know, are there any thoughts on that?
I'll go, because I had talked about that, and I really have been, just because I'm concerned about, the financial, the economic outlook in general. Now it's my turn to have the loud background noise. And I was really trying to look through the, comb through the budget for nickels and dimes, but I think that I at this point, I think we should fund that full request, especially in light of the fact that we haven't funded it every single year. So.
Okay, so you favor keeping it at 5,000?
I do, yeah.
And I second that as well, Rob. I think that while all of us probably make a voluntary contribution to the Narberth and Lower Merion ambulance, I think it's important for the borough to make that contribution in this year, in particular. But I think we also should say that it's always, that it's not a given that we'll always give the same amount. Maybe some years we give more, some years we give less, but that this year we would give that amount.
Okay, that's fine. Sean, maybe you'll address this later, but was there any way to add a little bit of reserve to the budget, or should we wait to discuss that later?
As of right now, I don't have any proposed amendments from my side from the staff's review. So I think we do have a budgeted surplus of about $12,000 right now. That's not a lot of money over that's 0.3% of the overall budget, but it's something.
Okay. Oh, and I think that was because of the savings that you and Matt found.
Yeah.
You explained at our last meeting.
And it also has to do with the small tax increase that happened last year to begin to build a reserve. And that's proven very helpful to us this year with our revenues down. And because we have been managing the financial aspects of expenditures, and things are pretty constant from year to year. We know where things are going. It smooths out highs and lows. So by raising that up, where we were getting a $39,000 scheduled surplus out of 2020's operating year, sort of cast a shadow on the following year for us to be able to do well the following year as well.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. I'm glad that we have that, at least the 12,000 as a reserve. Okay. So, all right. So I think if there are no other questions about those items, we'll move on to the EMC update. re-COVID. This is about the COVID rates. John, are you able to speak?
Yes, thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Glad to be on the call as always. I just wanted to give everybody an update regarding a couple things, obviously, and we'll start with the EMC and then go from there according to Rob's call. We met as a group, the Emergency Management Committee and Public Safety Committee. We met as a group on Tuesday, the 24th of November, 2 days before Thanksgiving, with everybody in attendance, with the exception, I think, maybe of Fran, I'm not sure. We did have Matt Scanlon, as always, on the call from Narberth Ambulance. The numbers apparently for COVID-19 itself are low for mainline health facilities all throughout the area. The one area that was spiking was on the other side of the county, in Abington Hospital seemed to see an increase. And that was about it. The one thing that Matt did add as an update as well is that the percentages are that they're seeing locally, at the very least for our immediate area, is back to around the percentages around June, May or June area. But all in all, their code calls are their AFRI calls, and as we refer to them in the Montgomery County communications rhetoric as AFRI calls, code calls, are kind of down. We haven't had too many ourselves in the Narberth Police Department. But I think one of the big challenges that everybody still has across, probably across the region is vulnerable communities, nursing homes, and older people that are really susceptible to this. And, as everybody knows, in our borough, we don't have that issue. We have no congregate care facilities. But to the mayor's point, the one thing that she added is that, we're very fortunate. However, we want to make sure that everybody just tries to take all the necessary precautions they can in order to stay safe. It's good. It's good to keep those things in mind. Overall, though, as a group, we did meet, and we're trying to stay on top of things. And just to give everybody an update as well about the Emergency Operations Center in Eagleville for Montgomery County Department of Public Safety, they are now back up on an interim basis. So they are going to have operational hours from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they are going to release reports, situation reports, on Wednesdays and Fridays. So the last situational report that we talked about was number 76 before we met. That was the one that was released on Friday, the 20th. And we are going to keep tabs on that. And that's kind of where we're at in terms of an update with emergency management regarding the virus.
Okay, thank you, John. And I just want to confirm that, of course, now we have our mask ordinance in effect downtown. And Mayor, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
We do have the ordinance in effect, and thanks to the office for getting us some signs that are in the downtown. I understand there's signs in the park. I've not been down there yet, but we had a couple incidents where the signs were being defaced. So hopefully that hasn't been too bad, and that's been taken care of. But for the most part, I'm seeing much more compliance in the areas I'm in the downtown. We've had a couple complaints from people regarding the parks and the lack of masks on some individuals in the parks, and we sent the officers around to patrol and see what's going on. But in general, I think it's having a good effect. I think it's having the effect that we're hoping to have. Okay,
thank you, Mayor. So, okay, so it's about 7, and I think let's try to take our public comment at 7:20 so that we can have time to transition to the council meeting at 7:30. So this means that we have 20 minutes now to work on the MOU question with Lower Merion, which is something that's kind of up for renewal. And Chief or Sean, whoever would like to kind of guide us through.
Sean, would you like me to go first, or would you like to go first?
Yeah, please do, John. The MOU is just the contractual agreement between Narberth Borough and Lower Merion Township for the provision of supplemental police services to the borough. And now that we have a management person in the police department, expert in these things, we have someone to help frame that relationship in a way that accurately describes what our department can do and what help we still do need from the township. So that's just so you all know too, and John, I'll stop talking in a second, is
Sure.
that we've been working with an expired MOU for at least a couple of years now. So the township is anxious to get this resolved, and I think it's in our interest to work cooperatively with them to do so in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you, Sean. So Chief, if you want to speak to this.
Sure. Thank you, Rob. Listen, everybody on the call knows that this is a subordinate relationship that we have with Lower Merion. We simply need them more than they need us. It's very important that we have a cooperation agreement in place to maintain that relationship. Even though, in my own opinion, it has been, restructured and it is robust, we do enjoy a healthy working relationship with Lower Merion. And just to let everybody know, regardless of whether the MOU expires or not, there is a clause, there is provision within this MOU that allows the current arrangements and obligations and provisions to go on beyond the expired date. So in other words, whatever is in past practice will continue. And that's the situation that we see now. However, we want to get this nailed down. We were working on this before the virus struck back in February and March. We're kind of getting back on board. One of the biggest challenges that I saw with the MOU is, even though it's a subordinate relationship that we have with Lower Merion, there were a couple paragraphs and a couple areas and sections that really needed to be addressed to protect the borough's interest with this relationship. And that's what I worked hard on. Now, a document that I just finished, which is our revised version of the MOU, was shared with Superintendent Mike McGrath as of yesterday. The final edits were done on it. I've been working on it for a little bit. But the areas which I thought were very important, and the mayor and I discussed this at one point in time too, and I kept that conversation in focus as we moved forward, was number one, media releases. That we have some proprietary ownership over media releases that are going to affect our borough if it was going to come from Lower Merion, even if it involved an investigation which originated in the borough, was being conducted by Lower Merion detectives. We wanted to have some type of skin in the game where that would default to us. That would default as a public information responsibility that would lie on us, either, myself as the chief, the borough manager, the mayor. We wanted to make sure that we had ownership there to make sure that we protected our interests. The other thing that had to be fleshed out was the investigations unit. So everybody knows on the call, when I first came here, we handled absolutely no investigations here in Narberth whatsoever. Our officers now handle investigations for not only for summary offenses, borough ordinances, follow-up investigations on miscellaneous incidents, but we also do misdemeanors and lower level felonies as well. So we communicate directly with Montgomery County District Attorney's Office to get charges approved on criminal complaints, keeping copies of records of declination from the respective ADAs, the assistant district attorneys that are involved. So we now have taken a big part of ownership of investigations to really provide great service to our taxpayers, our residents. So, but however, there are certain things beyond our scope that we have to defer to Lower Merion, because they have the resources, the infrastructure, the experience, and the personnel to do the job. So if we have serious felonies, we have to defer that to Lower Merion. If we have crimes in progress that leave a scene and it's an active scene, we have to defer that sometimes to patrol investigators from Lower Merion. The good news is that Narberth officers are now trained in investigations. We have trained just about every Narberth officer in investigative process to some extent throughout the past year to 18 months. And we're very proud of that. And we've worked as a team collectively to get that done. And we're going to continue with that to make sure that we continue with professional development. Those are the areas that are primary. The other one is supervision on how personnel are supervised when they come into the borough, whether it's Lower Merion officers or Narberth officers, and how the anticipated promotion of a sergeant would bake into that. So that language has been crafted. And we have also the big takeaway that we have in terms of financial is that we have to go back and really pursuant to a call that Sean and I and the township supervisor, Ernie, and Mike McGrath, the superintendent from Lower Merion Police Department, had a few weeks ago. They've covered a lot of hours for us recently, and that was because of the injuries that we sustained during the past spring and summer. The officer being deployed with the Army National Guard, Officer Matt Belfie. We had to really get them to cover a lot of hours, which were very unforeseen. And obviously they balked at it. They pushed back, and that conversation led to that meeting. So we're now starting to see a decline in those hours once again. I'll give everybody an example on the status of command report that I put out tonight. The total hours covered for November were about 126. If you look at October, which I kept on there, they were 205. So that's a drastic drop right there. We've already dropped to December below 100. We're now at about 98 for the month of December. So we're starting to see a return to normalcy in terms of coverage. But these are just some of the things that have to be covered in the MOU, because Sean and I discussed with the Lower Merion representatives that even though there may be a baseline cost to the services, that we may have to incur additional expenses if we identify a certain threshold of hours that are either going to be annual or per month that are going to have to be met. And anything beyond that would incur additional cost to be invoice billed back to us from Lower Merion. So we may have some good months in that regard. We may have some bad months, but overall, we're trying to stay on budget, for allocated dollars for what we have. In addition to that, we probably have one of the best things that we've seen, and everybody sees this on the call and all borough council, including the mayor, that we have really done an effective, great job controlling overtime here with controlled overtime hours. We see reductions, in many, many places with overtime. Unfortunately, some of that has led to increased coverage in Lower Merion hours. So everything's a balance. But this is a work in progress. This is very important for us to size up for the next 5 years to get in place, and then to work on additional things, because the department is going to look completely different. Right now I'm at year 2.5. The department is going to look completely different from this mark to the 5-year mark moving forward from now. So that MOU is going to have to be revised even further as we start to get into the future. So that's just some of the information that I have for the MOU. I have not heard back from Mike yet. I expect that I will. I'm very proud of the document that we put forth. I believe that it's very cooperative in spirit, yet at the same time it really protects the borough's interests as a governing body for this community. So if anybody has any questions or concerns, feel free to give them to me.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate the way you're looking at the hours holistically. So you're looking at overtime while you're also looking at shift coverage on the Lower Merion side. Do you have a number in mind, or can you share that with us yet of what would be the monthly expectation?
Sean and I recently had a discussion about that, and we're thinking that if you look at the allocated hours for PTO that each officer will get annually, you remove sick time and remove a couple other factors, but if you balance that out and have to cover those hours, you're probably looking at a monthly average that I would expect probably between anywhere from 95 to 130 if things go well. But that's barring no complications. For instance, look at what happened to us this past year. This year has been a challenge in so many different ways, not only with the virus, but also with the injuries for the officers. The one thing that we've had very good fortune is that there is no officer that has been affected by the virus in this department. We have not, service has not been interrupted from the virus whatsoever for us. And we're certainly very pleased and very humbled and proud by that. But however, the challenges with the injuries are obvious. The challenges with the deployment of Officer Belfie for 2 weeks in June was significant. So, these are, an ideal situation, a perfect world of that number of hours. We have a very small department. We could be, in that situation again. I'll give you an example. Right now, we have an officer who is in no duty status as a result of an injury sustained, duty related from October the 8th. So we don't want to get into detail about that. However, that is the reality of our department. We're doing good. We manage it well. But this is the downside. The coverage hours from Lower Merion is the downside. And it's a very, very, it's a balancing act that we put out there. Overall, it's not a perfect world. It's an imperfect one. We do the best that we can. I think that we do a great job as a small department managing this well with the entire team, not just myself and the officers, but for the professional staff as well. Matt, Michelle, Sean Metric, the cooperation, the spirit we have with Public Works. So I think that we do a tremendous job with Narberth Fire Company as well. And we get the job done. Overall, I think, Rob, that's kind of where we're at. But that depends on what the response is from Lower Merion. They may push back on that. They may say, John, there's just no way that we can have that type of limit, that type of threshold. We have to lower that down. And anything beyond that number will have to incur additional expense for the borough. So it depends on what the conversation is going to be. We did not include a hard number yet in the MOU as drafted currently. I think that's going to require further conversation between myself and Superintendent Mike McGrath and his command staff. We put the hours out there every month on an Excel spreadsheet calendar to Lower Merion. It is shared. The document that I do is actually posted in the sergeant's room, in their roll call room in Lower Merion, so they know exactly what coverage hours are required. So they get that, and then when it's revised during the month, it's updated as well.
Okay, thank you, John. Are there other questions for the chief, Mona? Or
I'm wondering if I'm looking at a copy of the MOU, but it's the one that was circulated in June, and I'm just wondering if that's is that a live link to a document that you're updating, Chief, or
yeah, Bob. Bob, that
version?
one that you have in front of you has been updated since then.
So so am I looking at a live update, or is there something you could circulate?
We can circulate the revised draft for everybody on the call. I just wanted to talk about it from the 30,000 foot view first, but the draft has in fact been shared with Superintendent Mike McGrath. It has been shared obviously with Sean Metric and Matt West, moving forward. But certainly I think that everybody should look at this document, not only to have a comprehensive understanding of it, but also to see how contemporary it is with our relationship with Lower Merion and the protective areas that I really took ownership of in terms of spelling out detailed information on what we expected, setting those standards on what we wanted for our community.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the close work you're doing with Lower Merion, and I'm updating this document. Look forward to seeing it.
Yep.
Thank you. Mona, did you want to add anything?
No, that's all I was going to ask too, is can we see the current document that's being negotiated? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
Just an update on the process, since this is essentially a contract in a way with the township. It'll have to be reviewed and approved by council. So John and I talked a little bit about expectations for timing. I'm going to give it a once over before the end of the week. We can circulate the document. However, there's going to have to be discussions and understanding on part of all of council, so that you all are prepared to vote for or against what we've proposed. So I think it's a process that can unfold between now and January, possibly February, but I'd like to keep it on everyone's short-term radar for that expectation.
Okay, thank you, Sean. So when we receive the draft from the chief, we could share that with the rest of council so they can be aware.
John, I don't see any problem with that. Do you?
No, I don't see it at all. As a matter of fact, I encourage it, and I'll tell you why. Because this is going to affect the elected officials, whoever they are moving forward, as well as professional staff, which maintains more static, obviously. But we've worked collectively as a group on this, and we should all be proud of this document. So I think in draft form that everybody should be see this, that to be a stakeholder, not so much in terms of worry, but for understanding on what the level of service is provided and agreed to by Lower Merion and what the expectations are, and as they're set. It gets into some good information, but a lot of the daily practice detail is left out of there. I mean, that's obviously police operational stuff. This is a cooperation agreement, but I agree, Sean, that we should be sharing this with the stakeholders in the community, which obviously are the representatives on council as well as the mayor. The mayor is well aware of some of the updates, and the mayor and I had a robust conversation about one of her main concerns, and I agree with her, was the vested interest that we had in controlling media releases in order to make sure that, there was no disparaging really of the borough. And we've actually seen that before, to a degree, through no fault of their own at Lower Merion Police Department. I can tell you that was just captured off another venue from a reporter. That happened quite some time ago. That was about 2 years ago. But nonetheless, yes, I agree, and I'll be sharing it.
Okay, thank you. So in the last few minutes we have before public comment, let's discuss the sergeant position, because this is an upcoming action item. That's my understanding, Sean, right? That council will need to take action.
Correct. The process procedure here is that the Civil Service Commission has submitted a recommended list, promotional list, and council can extend that promotion to person on the top of the list, and that then the condition of that appointment would be satisfactory completion of some other steps that I won't mention in public in case those steps aren't satisfied, but it would be a conditional offer, and it would require action of council to do so. So I expect that'll be done, Mayor, I think in December, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I think the list has been released, so now we have to move forward. We should move forward on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping as soon as we can.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. So we council did receive a letter from Michael Samuelson on November 23rd, chair of the Narber Civil Service Commission, with the list. So council is now in a position to, extend a conditional offer, and we could do that this month, I would think.
Yeah.
That is something that would be
Okay.
council's job to do. That's not the mayor's prerogative. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you. Just to clarify that, so so as a committee, I guess, Bob and Mona, are we comfortable then moving ahead? When I give my update to the rest of council, we would recommend the extending the conditional offer. Okay.
Well, I think it's
Okay, so I think. Go ahead, Mona.
contractual, right? So it's contractual. So the increase and the promotion are required in the contract, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's what we're bound to do.
Yeah, it's just a matter of kind of following this process, and the Civil Service Commission has done their part, evaluating the candidates, and now the ball is in council's court. So we can take the next step and recommend that to council. Okay, so thank you all. I think that's everything, unless I've missed anything. So why don't we take public comment? I see they're members of the public. Does anyone want to speak?
Yes, I would like to speak. This is Carol Marie Scanlon on Sabine Avenue. I would
Hi,
like to
Karen.
bring to council's attention an ongoing problem, a safety problem that we have on Sabine Avenue. As I've mentioned at multiple meetings, we are missing one-way signs on our street. We have two one-way signs. This is at the 200 block. We have two one-way signs on Essex Avenue at the mouth of the beginning of the street. And we have three one-way signs at the end of the street on Montgomery Avenue. But the expanse between Essex and Montgomery, which is a long block that has a hill on it, there's no one-way signs. And the amount of cars that we have going the wrong way down our street is increasing exponentially. And we neighbors wave down cars, and the number one comment we get from people saying, there's no signs. Where's the signs? And I would just like to ask this council. I've been asking this council for probably 5 years about getting the one-way signs replaced and getting one-way signs back up here, because the Sabine Park, I believe Bob was up at Sabine Park, and you saw how nice it's looking and how active it is up there. It is such a danger not having these one-way signs up when kids are crossing the street, when there's bicyclists going up and down. It is an accident waiting to happen.
Okay, thank you, Carol Marie, for bringing that to our attention as a committee. And we can certainly follow up with you on that.
Well, I know, and this is the same comment I've gotten for the past 5 years. And I'm just asking what action can be specifically done to address the problem.
May I ask a question for staff? Well, actually, first, Carol Marie, you're saying there are signs at both ends of the block,
but none in the middle. There is a sign at the parking lot facing into the parking lot, directing cars coming out of the parking lot that it is a one-way street, which is great because, there's no one-way signs. They don't even know. But as we get a car down, by the time you get to where the park is, the cars have already gone up the hill. And it's not a big hill, but there's no visual straight from Essex Avenue all the way to the park and Montgomery Avenue. So by the time the cars hit the park, they're going at a pretty good clip. And we haven't had a child hit yet, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my kid or the neighbor's kid or any of our community kids because there's not directional signs. And a one-way, when you're driving on a street and you see all the cars facing one direction, you look around and say, something, doesn't look right here. And you look for the one-way sign, you look for a directional sign, and there are none. The three directional signs, the three one-way signs that are at the stoplight at Montgomery Avenue don't do any good because it's too late by then. But we have people who come to the park on Sabine Avenue in front of the houses, and then they turn around in our driveway and go the wrong way down Montgomery Avenue. And it is truly the grace of God that there hasn't been a fatality at that corner, because people say, "Ooh, there's no traffic light, I'll just go." And they do. They cross Montgomery Avenue with no light.
So I guess just one quick question for staff. Is it possible to look at when the last time there was just to know the last time there was a study or a traffic study or engineering study of, not right now, obviously, but I'm just
Mona, can I help you? Can I weigh in there as the chief?
Sure.
I went and visited with Carol Marie 2 times extensively. I certainly concur. There's a lot of children on the street. We have gone out there and tried to do strict traffic enforcement. We have gone out there multiple times, and I've sat officers at that location for 45 minutes to an hour while they're handling paperwork, and just to keep an eye on traffic and to make sure that strict enforcement is going to be the rule of the day. Carol Marie is certainly correct in that regard. As you exit the parking lot at 201 Sabine, there is one-way sign right there at the intersection of Sabine and North Essex. There are do not enter signs on either side of the street at that intersection. But I think to Carol Marie's point, and I agree, that by the time they get up that crest of that hill, they're moving at a pretty good clip. My only concern would be, I don't know if a one-way sign there would prompt them to turn around or slow down. I'm just thinking if Carol Marie's still on the call, pursuant to our conversations, the one-way signs, Carol Marie, they would probably be helpful to maybe deter some of this, maybe more towards down the intersection of Sabine and North Essex. Would I be correct from our conversations?
Yes, that is exactly correct, because people would get this the idea that they're going the wrong way. We had a one-way sign when I first moved here 12 years ago to Sabine from Conway Avenue. There was a sign between the daycare center and the entrance to the parking lot. There was another one-way sign at the entrance of the parking lot to the steps at the where the park is. And there was another one-way sign. There were 3 one-way signs between the parking lot and Montgomery Avenue. And they were, one of them was directly across the street from the parking lot, and the other 2 were on the park side. And it's just replacing signs that were taken down for some reason, that were lifted, meaning stolen, just to get them back to make this block safe again. The park is phenomenally well used. It is so nice to see, since, as you know, Bob, you were saying how nice the park is looking. There's a lot of people, a lot of kids, a lot of families, a lot of adults that come and use that park, and it's just becoming a big, big safety issue.
And the one thing I would like to add, in addition to the signs, we really have to go out there and do strict traffic enforcement, because the other concern that I had for my days out there visiting, when I walked around by myself and with Carol Marie, that even the traffic that is flowing the right way coming off of Montgomery Avenue down towards North Essex, they start to go at a pretty good clip because they're coming off of Montgomery Avenue. So it's a worry on both sides.
And it's a long block. That's the other thing. It's a long block.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Thank you, Carol Marie. It sounds like, Chief, are you in a position that you could work with Public Works, or, you know, is there a way that you can procure a couple more signs?
Yeah, I think I shared emails about my pursuant to my meetings with Carol, with others. I know that Ed may be due back soon, but I have taken pictures out there. I have all the information that I need to work with Public Works, to get those signs up. I have to give credit to Carol Marie, because she really tries to go out there and advocate for the children, and they're not only at the park, but also are at Wonder Springs, which was formerly the Montgomery Early Learning Center, because there's a lot of traffic with on that block, and there's a lot of children there.
Chief, if you're working on this, could you also maybe take into consider if maybe a wrong way sign is warranted, or maybe some striping of the street that just make it obviously narrow, only narrow enough to fit one car, maybe an arrow or something. But this is, Rob, I just wanted to comment in general, since none of us are traffic engineers on the call, that this is the kind of thing, sometimes signs are warranted by, or need, require warrants. I sometimes there's state Commonwealth standards for how one-way signage is supposed to be done, and all of those kinds of things, and including ideas like mine, like wrong-way signs or striping or street painting. I know Matt West was going to say something, but I just wanted to say in general, like from time to time, we always hear about certain blocks that have these kinds of concerns. I remember for a while it was the 100 block of Conway Avenue. I know there's chronic concerns always about Windsor Avenue, and are there enough stop signs, and are the stop signs placed in the correct intersection? For a while it was Price and Conway. But over the years there have been half dozen to 8 or 9 concerns specific like this, and I think this is something that the infrastructure committee might be bringing up as a discussion item later tonight at the council meeting. And I think I know that the staff have thought about it pretty deeply too, and they might actually even have a process or a solution by which they address these things. So I think we would like to hear that kind of thing too before we get too far into the weeds of designing solutions. But I also really appreciate the fact that the chief is willing to just, work directly with Public Works, because I know he's on the leadership team, and so that's appropriate. So thank you.
Well, I have spoken with infrastructure and I've spoken with full council. I've spoken with public safety. I've spoken to different council members. I've spoken with the chief several times. And this is replacing signs that were already there.
Carol Marie, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. Carol Marie, I'm sorry. We're actually out of time because our council meeting begins at 7:30. But we will take your words into consideration and try to resolve this. I'm confident our staff can handle this. And Matt, I know you were going to say something, but we're actually out of time. So thank you, everybody, and I'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you.